Well, it's always a pleasure here on GCR to catch up with the next guest, one of our favorites, something I learn something from every time I chat with him. He is the great Buck Showalter, and he's back with us now here on the program. Buck, it's Glenn. Always good to chat. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Glenn, nobody's that busy. I love all these people act like you can't take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. I got a little time on my hand. It's not got a couple of grandsons that I'm chasing around the ball yards, so to speak. Remember it was called a ball yard?
I do remember when it was called a ball yard. I'm wondering, when you say you have some time on your hands, I'm wondering if maybe we could fill that time somehow. But I'll think about that at a different point. I'll think about that later. Buck, I want to go back if I could, because I remember what a revelation it was when you arrived in Baltimore, and it was later in the season, obviously, than this, but we were just so caught off guard by the culture change, and we were so excited about the way that you talked about. Like everybody always reminds I don't care about the save rule, I care about the win rule, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever heard a baseball person say. And I wonder, because I know the following year it didn't necessarily pay off, but did you feel like that time, even when they were out of it, there was nothing that you were going to do that year, was beneficial for the foundation that was ultimately laid for the Orioles?
Oh, without a doubt. Not always popping your gums and trying to see how cool a saying you can have. It's it's an accountability factor. I remember the first time we lost a game when I had gotten there, and I'm walking down to the press room, and the doorman, the ushers, different people that have worked there forever got their heads down and whatever. I'm like, hey, let's go. You want to feel like, Glenn, that losing is a fluke, and you can't wait till the sun comes up because you can get back to reality. Sometimes the baseball guys get you. Now, we weren't there yet. It was good to kind of keep your mouth shut, step back, take a look at things, and realize there were some very good people that went before you that had some challenges. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is when you go into a situation that's been struggling, you think everything there is bad, and you got to get rid of everything. That's a big mistake people make. There's some really good people there. You just got to change the atmosphere, and guess what, Glenn? Get better players.
Yeah, that
that's
helps.
how it works.
Yeah, that helps. I asked that because I do wonder, as much as everybody says, hey, whenever you want to hire a manager, you want to do it after the year because you want to have the largest pool of candidates that you can possibly have. And perhaps because I think so much about how immediately the culture seemed to change when you arrived in Baltimore, I find myself saying, I don't know. I don't know that it's the best thing for a team to kind of continue to wander and not know who the manager is going to be and not have those. Do you need to put someone in place before then? Does it need to be something that you do during the course of a year?
I think every situation is a little different, Glenn, and it also depends on who you're bringing in. It's kind of like a cheat sheet for the following year. It's kind of like think about a college baseball or football program that fires their coach and put an interim guy in. Well, what happens to the recruits? What happens to the NIL people? What happens? I know at Mississippi State, where I went to school, they fired their coach about 3 weeks ago, and every one of the players jumped in the portal.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's a different world. But it really isn't. I mean, it's kind of like a manager is kind of like the jockey in the Triple Crown races, and the GM used to be the trainer, so to speak, where you worked hand in hand and you were partners. And, the manager rode the horse, so to speak, and the GM kind of was the trainer. And I'm not saying it's bad or good or whatever. It's just a little different dynamic. Some people still do it. I cut my teeth with Gene Michael and John Hart and guys who'd been around, and we always came to an agreement about who our coaches were going to be. We didn't cram anybody down each other's throat. We both had some abilities to strike somebody, but, we always end up with people we were both comfortable with.
I wonder, Buck, I know the affinity that you have for Brandon Hyde. We've talked about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think from our conversations, I like Brandon Hyde a heck of a lot too. The argument that people make that sometimes you can move on from a manager and it creates a spark, right? It's what maybe shakes things up and gets people going. Knowing you never want to see anyone lose their job. Is there anything to that, or is that just some nonsense that we say into a microphone because we have to fill time?
Well, I keep saying it depends on who you bring in, who is the next guy, and uh, Billy Martin told me a long time ago, he goes, Buck, you're a ship passing in the night. He said they're going to mourn you for about 5 minutes, and they're going to wonder who the next guy is coming in and how it's going to. And that's a little cold. I try not to look at it like that, but there's some truth to it. The game will survive without you. You better keep that in mind. I text with Brandon. I had left him a message, but your heart goes out to guys and your family and stuff because you pour everything into it, and then, and some players will grieve it, think they could have done a better job, but, that's not their job. They're 25, 26. They don't carry those emotions yet. You got a lot of guys right now with Baltimore facing some failure for the first time in their life. They were, whether it be travel ball and all the different things they're involved in. And if they get through this, and they do have, I believe I looked today, 114 games left, 114. Okay. And everybody thought Minnesota was done 3 weeks ago. And look at them now.
Right.
So it can happen, but usually to put a good streak together, your pitching staff has to get hot. Everybody talks about hitters getting hot and all this stuff. The pitching staff has to get hot. That's usually what allows you to put a big streak together.
You and I have had a number of conversations in the last few years about the role of a modern manager in baseball. And I wonder if, in a moment like this, it becomes critical that the next manager of the Baltimore Orioles be someone who carries, a proverbial bigger stick, someone with some cachet, experience, high-level success that can walk in and say, hey, I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, but I think you need to be willing to listen to an on-field baseball person, and maybe the power needs to shift a little bit more between the front office and the on-field coaching of this team.
Well, that doesn't happen as much anymore. Actually, the ones that you see how close the two are usually go hand in hand. I know what a close relationship and how much they value A.J. Hinch and Joey Coras, those guys in Detroit. They have a lot of say. What's the old expression? You want me to cook dinner, but I can't pick the groceries or help pick the groceries. Yeah. But I think that was Parcells.
Yep.
But we, in a perfect world, but it doesn't exist. And some guys don't want that guy down in the clubhouse. They don't. They want to be able to, kind of. I call it a strong suggestion. It's maybe they should put a suggestion box outside your office. I had a very veteran player star come in my first time I was somewhere and put the lineup. Hey, take a look at this lineup. This is what I think we should play. And I just handed it back to him. I said, you know what? Why don't you go play X position? I'll take care of this. I mean, but it's not their fault. I mean, it's what they've been allowed to do. And I love the input. I can't many times a day I would and do say, hey, what do you think? Here's what I'm kind of thinking. What do you got? The greatest accolade you can pay a man is ask his opinion. And I'm sure that they did that in Baltimore. But people are very passionate about what they do. And when you've had things tried and tested and seen how it ends up if you don't follow a certain mode of operation, I try to keep people from stepping on their tail. And they go, why? I said, because I did that. I did what you're getting ready to do. It doesn't end well.
Buck Showalter with us on GCR. Buck, is that true no matter who you are? Like, is the power balance? We like to imagine from afar that you don't hire a Bruce Bochy or a Terry Francona type without saying we understand the power is going to shift to on-field. Maybe a Buck Showalter type, if you will.
But Glenn, that's why those guys survive so long. It's not about power. It wasn't that way with me. I mean, it's about, they're very team-oriented, and let's all have input, and let's all listen. And I look at Terry and Bruce and Bob Melvin and Wash. I've been in meetings with those guys, and they're asking, what do you think? Hey, what do you think? What do you think about this guy? I mean, it's just the opposite. Those guys are very welcoming to things from upstairs. I'm not so sure sometimes if the guys upstairs are as welcoming to what the guys down on the field have to bring.
That's the part that I that's the part I keep getting back to, and I don't know, right? I've been given reason to think that Mike Elias has had a bit more of the power here in Baltimore, but I'm not there every day, to your point. Yeah, I know you're not, right? So we don't know these things. But I do wonder if that once you go through something like this where a change had to be made, wouldn't everybody involved, ownership, everyone want to sit down and say, hey, maybe we need to rethink what all of this looks like moving forward and how all of our decisions are made, and maybe it becomes a bit more collaborative?
Well, and maybe it is. I'm not going to weigh in on how to land the plane with the pilot. I don't know. I'm sure that, there's some very good people there in charge that are going to probably do those things, and I've already done them. I mean, I try to keep that in mind, but I think you'll see. Some different things. I'm not that close to it.
Mm-hmm.
I did talk to Adam Jones the other day for the Hall of Fame induction. That'll be fun. I may go back there.
Oh,
the first time I went back.
Oh, that would be awesome. Oh, that would be so cool.
I haven't been back. Well, I haven't been invited, but that's okay too. But
it's not okay.
They got what? Tom Davis and Orsolek. I think a lot of people don't realize what a good player Orsolek was.
Joe
Orsolek was a good player.
He was. He was a hell of a player.
No, but you can tell I'm trying to change the subject.
I know you are. I can understand that. I know you're and by the way, I know you've look, you know the way this is. We're going to want you here in Baltimore no matter what, Buck. Like, let's make that abundantly clear. As we've said a million times, you're beloved. Not knowing that, you're nobody's giving you a call. You've made that very clear based on what your last answer is. If somebody called, would you say, hey, I need to know more about what that front office looks like in order to consider that? Is that something that a manager has to go through, whether it's you, whether it's Skip Schumacher, whoever it is, that has to say, hey, I see you've got some talent. That's great, but I need to know more about what that collaborative relationship looks like moving forward?
I think most good baseball men, I call it a curiosity. I have a great curiosity about things I don't know and things I don't understand. Like I know what I'm not good at, like teaching catching. If I saw John Russell working with Matt Wieters, I always tried to kind of get up next to him and listen because I wanted to be better at it. I had a curiosity about it, and you learn something every day. I mean, I see stuff on the field and I go, wow, I don't think I've seen that before. But it depends. I that's a tough question to answer, and that's why you ask it, and I appreciate it. But I'm hoping that everything works out. Orioles win 10 in a row, and everybody's talking about here we go. And they get some people healthy, and I don't wish bad on anybody. Life's too short. But, I'm pulling for it. I was looking at Adley today, and everybody talks about Adley this and that. Adley's doing okay. There's a lot of people. If you don't like Adley, I asked 31 clubs. They'll take him. He, I think sometimes we expect him to be, he's playing a premium position. He's, when you have a catcher that's an offensive threat in your lineup, it's pretty special. So that's not their problem. It's just the consistency of the starting pitch. I know you're not saying that.
No. I'm actually fascinated by this because, as you'd imagine, Adley's been compared to Matt Wieters a lot recently, and I think you and I have talked before.
What's wrong with that?
I love Matt Wieters, right? Like
yeah.
Matt Wieters was a very important player on very good baseball teams, but yet when you bring his name up, there's a lot of, but what wasn't he? And I'm interested in that because Adley will forever be judged by the fact that he was a 1-1 pick in the draft. And
is that his fault? You know what I mean? That's what I ask people a lot. They want to talk about this guy and that guy. They're both good players. I mean, trying to critique it. I know those conversations that go on behind the scenes about trying to project them and, until the product's over with. I remember when I first got there with Matt, there was some rookie hazing. I hate hazing of young players.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember calling Matt in, I think 2 or 3 weeks in there, and said, hey, Matt, close the door. I said, here's what I need you to do. All these people that are making it a little tough on you, I said, they're going to be gone. They're not going to be around when we do what we want to do here. I said, I need you to be the big guy. You just walk around, know that I got your back, that you're going to be our catcher, and I need you to start being a peacock, okay? And those guys are going to be a pimple on your forehead in another 6 months, so don't worry about it. And we talked later about what that meant to him, just to go, hey, go be Matt Wieters. Let it, whatever that is, that's okay. We like it. And Matt cared about the pitching staff. He was a threat at the plate. And what people miss about Matt Wieters, he was durable.
That's a great point. That's a really great point, Buck. Yeah, he was there, man. I hate when people talk about Matt Wieters in this town because Matt Wieters was a damn.
Really?
I hate it because nobody talks about it appropriately. He was a damn important part of really good baseball teams and should be respected that way.
He was culture, too. He was a guy that teammates respected. Good leaders, players want to please them. Players want to please, whether it's Markakis or Jeter, or Adam Jones or J.J. Hardy, do the players want to please them? Do they not want to let them down, so to speak? And, Matty was that guy. I mean, he posted up and, they talk about all these stats and numbers and everything they look at when they're trying to evaluate players. I look at one thing to start off with, Glenn. I look at games played. All that other stuff is great, but it doesn't matter if you're not on the field. Okay? And there used to be an old expression, well, I remember an old scout would go, he's a bad tissue guy. And I'd go. And I remember talking to some doctors later on, because there is such a thing, guys that just don't heal well. And guys that are kind of injury prone. So I always remembered that. So I always looked at games played.
I think it's important. I think it matters, Buck. I'm with you on all of those things.
Well, I think sometimes we create that a little bit in today's game.
Yeah.
It's like the guy that goes in and says, does your finger hurt? No. Now does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. About the fifth time, you go, well, it is a little sore.
Right now that you mention it.
Right. Yeah. I watch these guys, and I don't want to say it's not their fault. I mean, we're always projecting, well, let's do this today for that tomorrow. Posting up's important. So I remember guys used to do a lot of things that, is not acceptable today.
Can I come back to Adley for a second? Does there become a point where the production is troublesome enough for a long enough period of time that you do have to have Bordy referenced the other day the idea of sending him down. And I don't think the Orioles have the luxury of doing that. I don't think that's an option. But, is there a point at which the production is a certain number for a while and you say, we've got to talk about this?
Okay, let's compare him with the other 31 catchers. Okay, he's going to hit 20 home runs. He's probably going to hit 270 before it's over. He's going to walk a lot. He's going to be on base. And he's going to catch a pitching staff and bring sincerity. And I don't know what, and I'm not as close to it as y'all are. Right. Maybe if I watched it more, I might feel it. But I just – he's got a good – I'll see a highlight and he's beating himself up on something. And he doesn't need to be – he just needs to go catch and play, and play. He doesn't need to worry about satisfying so many people, And unfortunately, with today's social media, you never know what these guys are being exposed to once they leave the locker room.
I understand that thought. I feel like, to your point, if everybody saw him hitting 270 right now, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation, right? I think that's
he's hit 270 before in a big league.
He has,
He's also he's had over 500 bats twice. Take a look at how many catchers are posting up for 500 plus at bats. Not many. So we always dwell on the negative instead of what he does bring. He's one of those guys you probably won't completely miss till he's gone, where you're chasing another catcher and another catcher. That's usually in the draft. The old scouts would tell you the graveyard is high school catchers and sometimes college guys, but you still got to take them. You can't play the game without them. There's a lot of catchers, Glenn, in the big leagues are converted position guys from Latin America. I know that's what we did with Posada. I remember the first time I saw Posada playing second base down in instructional league, and Cleet Boyer was talking about moving him behind the plate.
Did you think that he was that good?
I know he wasn't going to play second base. He couldn't move very good. He threw well and was just starting to switch hit. Back then,
hell of a player, man. He was a hell of a player.
Anybody 17 or 18 years old, we always started switch hitting them and made them fail. I saw that. I guess Cedric quit hitting right-handed, but I know with Bernie Williams how he fought me tooth and nail about hitting left-handed. Boy, he hated it.
Let me I want to pose this without you thinking that I'm asking something else, right? So can I understand? I'm not asking you this to try to get you to answer a different question when I say it this way. Mm-hmm. If they called, right? If they did, would there be any awkwardness from how it ended? Would that be a factor for you at all? Would you be able to completely just say, I don't care about that. I would talk about the job. That's it.
Well, no, I don't. First of all, how it ended. It was a heck of an honor. I stayed there 8, 9, 10 years. I'd have to look it up, but to survive that long in a great town, a great ballpark, there's nothing awkward.
Okay.
But no, we've got a place up there that we go to when I visit my son.
I know.
But I don't want to get. I'm hoping that they win the next 10 games. I really, I don't. It's as far as awkward baseball people, you're around each other every day, and that stuff gets put in the back burner very quickly if there is something like that, because you're trying to win. And I know about players and stuff. They'll go, "Hey, let me tell you about this player you're gonna have," and I go, "Hold on a second." I said, "I appreciate it, but let me make up my own mind. Let me give this guy a fresh start, so to speak, because I found out a lot of things." I remember Tommy Pham. I remember Carl Everett. I remember all these guys that everybody said were going to be tough to manage. Randy Johnson, Max Scherzer, Kurt Schilling. They weren't at all. If you go into it with an open mind and you're straight up with them, what they didn't want was any phony stuff. They really liked to mix it up, and they liked somebody that was kind of in their face, so to speak.
Buck, I'm not going to lie to you. I would like for them to make that phone call, although it would probably mean.
That's not.
I know what you're saying. I I appreciate that. This is Glenn Clark now saying.
They got a lot of. Well, is it Mansolino? Are they going to keep him? Maybe they'll keep him.
I haven't gotten. I haven't been able to feel that out at all. Right? Like, I think a lot of people were surprised that it was him and not Chirinos or Buck Britton that was given the first shot at it, and that is interesting.
Well, maybe they're wanting somebody to make a fresh start. You asked a great question earlier. I think each situation is a little different. I think when Andy McPhail came here to Dallas to talk to me, he really wanted me to kind of get a feel for what was going on there and not have that unknown of the off season. And in that situation, it was a good move. There's some other ones that I would think wouldn't be, so to speak. But, they get some hot starting pitching and get some people back that have been hurt a lot of the year. They could get on a roll. I'm not so sure. I don't know how you feel about that division this year.
It's not.
Detroit's for real.
It's definitely not as good as we thought it was coming into the year. There's no question about that. Nobody's running away.
Well, I think when Tampa playing outside, I knew that was going to be a challenge for them. Is when their pitching in that ballpark is so good, and when they had to play their home games outside, that's why you got to be careful about taking a pitcher that's pitched in that ballpark on your team, because it's different. They got a lot of foul ground. The lighting's not real good. They got the thick turf. There's a lot of good things about pitching in that ballpark.
Are you giving the speech when Adam goes in? Is that is that what you guys were talking about?
Oh, I don't know. Adam called me from Spain the other day. I don't even know what we're supposed to be talking about, so I don't know. I'm still thinking about it.
Buck, here's the hilarious part too. Adam, like last year, was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna move back. I think I'm gonna move back here." And I said, "That's awesome." And then like 2 weeks later, he's like, "No, why would I do that? I'm in Spain. Like, my life is." His wife's
what
happy.
I feel great about it? Obviously, this guy saved his money and invested properly. I'm so good about it. He and his wife, they're both, I know his wife wouldn't let him, but Adam would. I think Adam's smart enough. He's very smart. And no, I'm trying to still decide whether I'm going to do it. And we'll see. It's a great event.
It's awesome
for Adam. I know Tom Davis. That's a good move too. I'm happy for him.
Tom's the best. He's ours, right? He's so uniquely Baltimore, isn't he? He's just so uniquely. He's one of us.
Now, I haven't kept up with it. They moved the fences back, and now they moved them back in a little bit.
Yeah, not the entire not the entire way back in. Sort of in between the two.
So why? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what was different.
They said they thought they overcorrected in the process.
Overcorrected. Okay.
Yeah.
I know one thing. Looking at it, no one would ask me. I was worried about the safety factor. Adam and I were talking about that the other day. That jut out there, that's the first thing I would think about.
I hate it.
The safety factor.
I hate how it looks. I think you're 100% right about the safety factor. Like, I don't know how we ever have those in ballparks. Like, I don't
know. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I don't want everything to be cookie cutter, right? Like, I know that that's part of what baseball is we like that the ballparks look different.
Human yard's so good.
Right.
Yeah.
But those juts, anywhere they are, whenever I see a jut, it feels like it just feels very Little League to me. It feels
Well, when it's contrived, when it's like it's put in there instead of part of, like, the building was already there in right field. It wasn't like somebody built it afterwards. Right. The tunnels going around that place. I don't know if you've ever been through some of the tunnels underneath that thing. I have. There's some things I don't want to know. But
I actually haven't. Not all of them.
I'm always surprised when ballparks, new and ones that they renovate, that the Players Association doesn't get involved with the safety factor. I know one of the first things I asked Peter to do when we redid Sarasota, I want to make it the safest ballpark in the Grapefruit League. And we did. We padded everything. We made sure the wall had the proper padding, the foul poles, the dugouts, because I wanted to feel like, our guys would come out of games healthy if we could, the things that we could do with it. We did make the hitting background better so that the guys could see the ball. That's why Adam used to kid. He had a pair of gray pants. He didn't have a pair of gray pants in his locker, him and Markakis, because I wasn't going to take them to Dunedin and some of those places that everybody got hurt in. I'm just always surprised that the Players Association doesn't get involved more with ballpark safety. Like, Houston's got their left field fence is got rivets and screws sticking out of it.
Right.
And that's okay.
Well, and they did the hill. The hill. I mean, obviously they got rid of it, but like, how did that ever exist?
It's called fake nuance, is what it is.
Yeah, right. Like, we'll think it's cool because it's different. They
used in Boston, every time there's a left-handed pitcher going there, you can't see his curveball if they sell the seats that the curveball comes out of.
Sitting. Yeah, that's a great point. Right.
I'm not paranoid. I'm alert. I used to go.
Wait a second. Did it bother you? You and I have never talked about this. When the Orioles hired you, I had worked in Arizona from 06 to 08, Buck. Mm-hmm. And I called a lot of my friends that I knew, and they said, you're going to really like him, but he's a micromanager. Did it bother you that you had that reputation when you were like, yeah, I'm just trying to do like what's better for the team?
No, you are what you are. I don't. People that really don't know, but you bring in every situation what's needed. There, we were starting up from scratch.
Right.
We had to start a farm system. We had to start a scouting department. We had to design the locker room and the dugout and the foul poles and center field fence, different things. So you had to be on top of it. We had to start a Latin American program. We had to, I was going all over the place. And so that kind of comes with it, but it was nice to get to Baltimore with Andy McPhail and the things that were in place, Brian Graham, and all I had to do was manage the team. So, you bring what they need you to bring. I always ask them, what do we need? What do you need that's missing that I can help with? And that's all. So that type of stuff, you bring what you're supposed to bring. We didn't have a lot of policies that we got credit for out there. It's kind of a running joke. Kurt Schilling called me the other day about something, and he was talking about some of the fallacies that they had come out of there that really weren't true. But that's the world we live in, Glenn.
Buck Showalter, I always appreciate it. You are far too kind to me, my friend. Thank you for doing this, and let's talk again real soon, all right?
Well, when you got to worry is when they quit asking, Glenn. Take care of yourself.